We're back after ITV News at 10, but Mary's next with the ITV Evening News. Till then, bye-bye.
Two steps forward and one step back for the rollout of England's vaccine programme. The first doses of Moderna were given out today as the over 45s take their turn. But tonight, fresh concerns about the safety of a new jab due here soon from Johnson & Johnson. With localised surge testing also underway after an outbreak of the South Africa variant, what could it mean for the vaccine and indeed lockdown? Also tonight.
My son said to me the other day, "This just looks so grim," and I felt really bad inside.
Under investigation, the appalling housing uncovered by ITV News, both council and private rentals under the spotlight. The defence begins to outline their case at the trial of the police officer accused of killing George Floyd. And
Wade calls to Wyatt and wins the toss at Lord's in the second South African test.
a battle for the language of cricket as the sport's newest competition tears up the rule book.
I think it's nonsense. Everybody knows a wicket's a wicket, an out, what's an out? It's certainly come from some think tank somewhere.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. England's vaccination programme took two significant steps forward today, but with a warning, it may not be a straight route ahead. The over 45s can now get vaccinated, and such was the demand, the booking website briefly crashed. And the NHS now has a third vaccine at its disposal, with people in England receiving the Moderna jab for the first time. There was less good news, though, from the pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson, which is delaying the rollout of its jab in Europe while rare blood clots are investigated. The Department of Health insisted that shouldn't derail the UK programme, with the Prime Minister saying he has no plans to slow the lifting of lockdown. Here's our science editor, Tom Clark.
And then there were three. Today, the Moderna vaccine joined Pfizer and AstraZeneca jabs in England's rollout.
Thank you. I didn't feel anything. I'm really pleased because it gives obviously people in my situation an alternative if you're under 30, which is really reassuring given the new findings. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to have it.
The timing is good. The Moderna jab works in the same way as the Pfizer vaccine, meaning there are now two alternatives to the AstraZeneca jab, no longer recommended for the under 30s due to the rare risk of blood clots.
Now that we have three jabs, that means a further big milestone in the programme and means that we are on track to be able to offer the vaccine to all adults by the summer.
The rollout was expanded today with the over 45s invited to come forward. But as one jab joined the stockpile, another was taken away. US drug giant Johnson & Johnson announced it would delay the supply of its COVID vaccine across Europe as regulators investigate potential links to blood clots similar to those seen with the AstraZeneca jab. Over 40 million Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines have been administered so far in the UK, and we've ordered 17 million of the Moderna vaccine being rolled out now. The UK has also ordered 30 million doses of the J&J vaccine, though these were due in the second half of 2021 after the target date to have all adults vaccinated.
Thanks to the UK Vaccine Task Force, they've ordered a whole portfolio of vaccines, including many millions of doses of Novavax, Valneva, CureVax, Moderna. We've got more Pfizer to come. So I don't see this as interrupting our vaccine programme should we decide, the regulator decide not to approve this vaccine.
So for now at least, we can remain confident about the great reopening, but not overconfident.
People need to understand that the success of the vaccine rollout is great, but it's not just the vaccine rollout that's causing the reduction in deaths and infection. Overwhelmingly, that's been delivered by the lockdown. Now, we need to continue to be cautious and be sensible as we roll forward with the vaccination programme.
Scenes like these in central London last night clearly worrying the government. We've been here before and could still see a surge in cases among the tens of millions yet to be jabbed.
And Tom joins me now. It's never straightforward, is it? Because as well as that, there are concerns about this localised outbreak of the South Africa variant in parts of London. And surge testing associated with it. So how worrying is that?
It's not great timing, actually, as we start to open up. We've obviously been on our lookout for these new variants, and they pop up from time to time, most of them being picked up by testing at ports of entry and things like that. We've got a big cluster, about 75 confirmed and suspected cases in South London. Surge testing to try and get those under control. Of course, the reason we're worried about the South Africa variant and others like it is there is good evidence that the vaccines don't work as well for people infected against those. So if you're vaccinated, you might not be as well protected. Reasonable to expect that they do protect against serious illness and hospitalisation. Bit disappointing about the J&J vaccine, also called the Janssen vaccine by some people, the Johnson & Johnson one. It does show in clinical trials reasonably good protection against at least serious illness from that South Africa variant. So it's a shame that one's dropped off. But also, more broadly, concerns, given we've seen this rare blood clot signal with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, some hint, too early to confirm this at any stage yet, but some hint it might be similar with that vaccine. Could we be looking at a wider problem? So real urgency now to understand what might be going on with those vaccines, just in case we need to change how we deploy them. OK, Tom, thank you. Well, Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon announced an acceleration of lockdown easing today from Friday. People will be allowed to leave their local areas, and groups of 6 adults from different households will be able to meet outside, and that's 10 days earlier than planned. And there are further changes from the 26th of April. 4 people from 2 households can meet in cafes, pubs or restaurants. Gyms, non-essential shops and attractions like museums will also reopen, and travel to other parts of Britain will also be allowed. Well, our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith is in Glasgow for us this evening. So, Peter, some measures are being eased a little bit earlier than expected.
Indeed, 10 days earlier than expected, Scotland's great outdoors is back open for business. But if you want to go and climb a Munro in Glencoe or catch some waves on the beaches of Belhaven, keep in mind that the tourist accommodation is not yet opened, and that won't be opened until the 26th of April, same with pubs and restaurants and whatnot. So if you are making a trip, then you'll have to be back in your house again on the same day. But the focus for this isn't just for getting people to enjoy for recreational purposes what Scotland has to offer. It's to reunite families who live in different council areas. They won't have been allowed to see each other since Christmas Day, and also today Nicola Sturgeon increasing the numbers who are allowed to meet. From Friday it will be 6 people from 6 different households. She said she's able to do this because the COVID numbers have dropped 40% in just the last 2 weeks here. But it's not just about the physical health, she's considering mental health.
So we've considered whether we can bring forward any changes that will particularly boost mental health and well-being. So we focus really on trying as far as possible to give families more opportunity to get together earlier than was planned.
So the idea here is to ease the pressure. The day on the 26th of April, when everything was supposed to reopen in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon didn't want everyone having those family reunions the same day as the pubs reopened. So for now we can meet, but we will in Scotland be watching you in England with some envy as you return to the pub.
Peter Smith in Glasgow, thank you. I'm moving away from COVID now, because if you've watched ITV News recently, you may well have seen our reports exposing the appalling conditions that some people are living in homes blighted by extreme mould and damp. Well, now the Housing Ombudsman is to investigate the issue, encouraging people to come forward with their stories. And there are certainly many examples out there, as our political correspondent Daniel Hewitt has been finding out.
Up the walls and on the windows, where they eat, where they wash, where they sleep, mould and damp has infested Tiffany's flat.
I've lost a few curtains and a few other stuff.
Trying to raise 3 children in this 2-bed property is hard enough, but this is making it unbearable. The smell so bad in the bedrooms, the family now all sleep in the living room.
I do worry for them, their safety, their health, you know, for their mental state as well. I've raised my concerns so many times, and it seems like nobody cares. Why have we been forgotten?
Tiffany has been complaining for 10 years. Her housing association, Lewisham Homes, have previously washed away the mould and redecorated and told us they will take steps to stop it coming back again. But Tiffany says it always comes back. The thread running through the hundreds and hundreds of examples of poor housing we have seen as part of our investigation has been a growing problem with severe mould and damp. Now the Housing Ombudsman, the independent regulator dealing with complaints in England, is to investigate that very issue. Concerned, they say, at the number of complaints they are dealing with, but also concerned at the number of cases not coming forward and the potential damage it could be causing. The inquiry will focus on residents in council and housing association properties, but not those renting privately, who account for the biggest proportion of UK renters.
The problem in the private renter sector is there's a real imbalance of power between the renter and the landlord. The landlord is still able to evict a tenant for no reason whatsoever. So many people live in fear that if they make complaints, they're going to get evicted, and all too often that happens.
So obviously this is my bedroom. This is where I don't want to sleep.
In Newquay, 37-year-old Julie Roberts is no longer able to wash the mould off the ceilings and the walls she's privately rented for 7 years.
Last year I was diagnosed with lung cancer, brain, liver. Last week I was diagnosed with on my bladder and half my lungs collapsed now.
Julie last complained to her landlord 5 months ago. She now doesn't know how long she has left, but she knows she doesn't want to spend a second more of it in this.
So it upsets me. All I want is just, someone just to say, just come out and say it's not condensation. I know that's all of us get is condensation.
The property manager, Mears, told us they guarantee repairs will be completed as quickly as possible and have offered Julie alternative accommodation until it's finished. But for every home being fixed, there are many more, housing many families forced to live in disrepair and the despair that so often comes with it. Daniel Hewitt, ITV News.
Boris Johnson says maximum possible access will be given to an inquiry into how the collapsed finance firm Greensill Capital was awarded government contracts. It comes after details emerged of lobbying efforts by the former Prime Minister David Cameron to secure NHS contracts on the firm's behalf. And the government has scrapped its LGBT plus advisory panel, which it says will be replaced in due course by a new body. Last month, ITV News revealed how 3 members had already resigned from the group, which was set up by Theresa May in protest at government policy. Now, witnesses to the aftermath of the Fishmongers Hall terror attack have been describing the horrifying scenes which unfolded that day. Convicted terrorist Usman Khan killed 2 people at a prisoner rehabilitation event near London Bridge in November 2019. Today, an inquest heard from some of those who were there, as Martha Fairley reports.
The inquests have heard about events leading up to the deaths of Jack Merritt and Saskia Jones. On the 29th of November 2019, they were at an anniversary event organised by the Learning Together prisoner rehabilitation programme. Also there was Usman Khan, the 28-year-old convicted terrorist, seen here in video filmed at the event, was attending as an alumni of the scheme. During a workshop discussion in the banqueting room of Fishmongers Hall, he'd been invited to sit at a table by barrister Catherine Jaquis, who told the inquest jury, "I remember him saying something to the effect of he had been involved with a group of people who had been leading him down the wrong path. He had now seen that way was wrong, and he was now essentially turning the other way or going a different way." Shortly after this video was taken and following a refreshment break, screaming was heard outside the room. Filmmaker Amy Coop told the jury, "There was more screaming and shouting, and it very quickly became apparent that something very bad had happened. As soon as I stepped out onto the landing, it was clear that something was going on." From above, she could see Saskia Jones lying on the stairs with a man kneeling next to her trying to help her. She went to look for a first aid kit, and as she returned to the landing, she heard a loud guttural roar from a man. Usman Khan, who was armed with 2 knives and wearing a fake suicide vest, was tackled by members of the public outside Fishmongers Hall and then shot by police on London Bridge. The inquests continue. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Still to come, the ITV Evening News, why doctors and imams are urging Muslims not to miss out on the vaccine during Ramadan. And the sport of cricket in a spin over language. The first police and protesters have clashed for a second night in a suburb of the US city of Minneapolis. It's after a black man, Deontay Wright, was shot dead by an officer who apparently meant to taser him. Now, tensions were already high in the city as the trial of the former officer accused of murdering George Floyd continues there. And today his defence team began to make their case. Our US correspondent Emma Murphy was watching.
Sir, passenger, can you undo your seatbelt?
It is different footage with a very different outcome, but filmed by police seeking to detain George Floyd.
I don't plan on shooting you. I'm just saying, just take your time. Okay, relax. Just undo your seatbelt.
It was played in court today to support the view of George Floyd less as a victim, more as an unpredictable drug user.
That was one yellow pill, boss. Okay, now slowly come on out.
It was played with a warning from the judge that this was to be shown to demonstrate the effect of drugs on personality, not to be used as a judgment on character.
You're not going to get beat up or nothing. You just follow what we're asking you to do.
It'll be the truth and nothing but the truth.
The paramedic called to help him, testifying as to how many drugs he admitted taking.
So he told you that he had been taking those pills throughout the day, right?
Yes, and I asked him why. He said it's because he was addicted.
Evidence too from another officer on the scene on the day of George Floyd's death, building the narrative that bystanders trying to intervene distracted police.
They were very aggressive. Yes, aggressive towards the officers, yes.
Did the volume increase?
Yes.
The opening of the defence comes at a difficult time for this city. Footage has now emerged of the death of a 20-year-old man, Deontay Wright, killed when an officer accidentally fired her gun, rather than a taser, trying to detain him. Horror at the manner of his death has brought protests to these streets once more.
You just killed Deontay Wright. If I make a mistake, are y'all gonna kill me too? If I make a mistake, are y'all gonna kill me too? Y'all can make mistakes to kill people, and it's okay.
The city was already incredibly tense before the latest police shooting. Hundreds are now out on the streets defying the curfew. And when they say to the police, don't shoot, they don't say it lightly. It is a difficult backdrop for those tasked to defend in court and for those tasked to ensure the safety of this city and its people. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Minneapolis.
Here, a man has been jailed for at least 19 years for plotting a terror attack during lockdown. Sahib Abu, a rapper who called himself the Masked Menace, bought an 18-inch sword, a knife, balaclavas and body armour for the lone wolf attack he planned last summer. He was arrested in July after discussing guns with an undercover police officer he met on a messaging app. Now, for the second year running, the Muslim holy month of Ramadan has begun under COVID restrictions. The vaccine programme will be instrumental in preventing that happening again, of course, but recent data showed that vaccination rates for the over 70s are lower amongst Muslims than other faiths. And amid fears some may not get the jab during Ramadan, community leaders there have clarified that vaccination does not break the rules of fasting. Here's Sangeeta Lal.
Prayers at 3 a.m. Hard to adjust on the first day of Ramadan, even harder to do it in isolation again. It's a month where Muslims fast during daylight hours, a time though that's made many nervous about having a vaccine, concerned it could break their fast, something Sahira once also thought.
I also misunderstood it, that because you're fasting, you're not allowed to sort of be injected. But no, it's been clarified to us anyway, and to a lot of, to most all the community, I think.
A message Abra is also passionate to share after losing his father, Abdul, to COVID earlier this year.
It's a big, massive chunk has left from our body. And, the entire family is still grieving about it.
What information would you like people to understand?
The injection that goes into your muscle, right? It's not like a supplement like food, if that makes sense. And the senior scholars have said it's permissible. So those who are fasting, they don't need to worry about the fact that their fast is going to break.
There is some hesitancy among all communities for a COVID vaccine, but latest government figures show that Muslim people still have the lowest uptake. And now health bosses are urging people to get vaccines through Ramadan so they don't fall further behind.
We know that there are side effects associated with the vaccination programme. The vast majority of cases, these are very mild and they're self-limiting in that they will settle down by themselves. However, as with any illness in Islam, when you are fasting, if you feel that the fast is going to make your illness worse, or if it will delay your recovery, you are able to break that fast and make up for it at a later stage.
As thousands face another Ramadan under COVID restrictions, many hope speaking out about the vaccine will mean never having to spend this month of togetherness in isolation again. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News.
A Jack Russell has been found trapped under rocks 3 days after going missing with his owner in North Yorkshire. The man was found on Friday, but it took rescue teams longer to find his pet. And it was thanks to the persistence of a search volunteer and his own dog that Murphy was eventually found when he was heard barking beneath some large rocks. Murphy's now been reunited with his owner and is doing well. And finally, trying to explain the intricacies of cricket to those unfamiliar with the game can leave them in a bit of a spin. Hoping to attract more fans, bosses are throwing everything at a new, shorter format, the 100, which starts this summer. And to simplify it, they're replacing some phrases like wickets with phrases like out instead. But as Ben Chapman reports, for some purists, it's not cricket.
The sun blazes down, Lords is packed.
Its traditions are centuries old, from the clothing to the vocabulary.
Hammond bowls bell and the innings closes at 228.
But now the word over could soon be over and a wicket changed to an out. And in the well-mannered world of grassroots cricket, it's conjuring up some choice words of their own.
I think it's nonsense. Everybody knows a wicket's a wicket. An out, what's an out? It's certainly come from some think tank somewhere that thinks this is the way forward.
The new language is part of a new, faster format called the 100. Other changes include bowlers bowling 10 balls, not 6, and new teams with exciting names like Superchargers and Rockets. It's the latest attempt to make cricket more accessible to younger players and fans.
Definitely changing the word wicket to out makes it seem less daunting for new people, a lot more understandable as well.
And it's modernising cricket, making it more attractive for the younger generation. It's fast-paced rather than the traditional slow pace that everyone sees cricket as.
Supporters of the new format point to the success of the Indian Premier League, which uses the shorter 2020 version of the sport. Traditionalists initially questioned its authenticity too. Is this cricket?
Yeah, I think it is. There's 3 stumps at one end, there's 3 stumps at the other end.
One of cricket's more unconventional characters says it's worth a try.
As long as it puts bums on seats, it brings crowds into the ground, then I'll be happy, because we've got to get bums on seats and it's all about money, isn't it?
But for some, there are things that are simply more important, and it seems the word wicket is where they draw the line. Ben Chapman, ITV News, West Yorkshire.
And that's it for now. Tom Bradby will be here with news at 10. But from me and all the team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.